Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. I want to thank Matt Rife because this should be a slow news week. It's not at all. We're going to talk about Matt Rife. Again, Johnny Mac, you never mention him. But before that, some leftovers from late night. President Biden turned 81 recently. Seth Meyers said President Biden celebrated his 81st birthday, but not as much as Republicans did. Jimmy Kimmel pointed out Joe Biden's 60th birthday is now old enough to drink. The Mary Sue asks a good question. Why has Matt Rife turned against his female fan base? The Mary Sue writes, so you want a shot at testosterone or something? To be fair, Matt Rife said he's incredibly grateful for women for basically making him famous, but he wants men to be his fans too and thinks comedy is, quotes, more for guys. The Mary Sue says it's a weird energy I don't really understand, made even weirder by his comedy special where he kicks things off with a domestic violence joke and more. It's one thing to know that your work found a fandom online that it might not have found otherwise. On one hand, I guess I could see how Rife would have to pivot, but then to decide, let me use women and then turn on them when I found fame really does feel like the worst possible move. Rife, again, only really posted his crowd work online, and women defended him in comments and online when people would criticize him for focusing on crowd work over jokes. Now, my For You page is filled with people turning on him for his actual jokes, and rightfully so. The Mary Sue continues and says, in the special, he also goes on to try and uplift women, I guess by mocking our obsessions with the zodiac and crystals. I'm so tired of you ladies blaming your poor decision-making skills on planets that don't even know you. Get this through your head. Astrology isn't this magical life guideline that predetermines your future in the stars. No, none of that. Your future is dependent on your own thoughts, opinions, and actions. You're in complete control of how your future turns out. It's not up here. It's in here the whole time. It's up to you. The Mary Sue writes, is that meant to make me happy? Why do men constantly feel the need to trash those who look to astrology? There's not a joke in there. I don't care what his end goal was, even if his intentions were pure. He just meant to simply show his comedy was not just crowd work. That's not what he said. He said he wasn't just for a female base. Women helped to make him. I hope he likes his male fan base. I hope they love his gross jokes and support his little TikToks, because whatever the intentions behind this, it's an absolute betrayal of the people who helped to support his work as a comedian. In Glamour, Kathleen Walsh writes under the headline, Matt Rife tried to impress the guys with his misogyny. It backfired. Kathleen writes, the idea that Rife is trying to change his brand isn't a leap. By the way, Rife has literally said he doesn't want to make comedy for women. The week before his special began streaming, Rife told Variety, one thing I wanted to tackle in the special was showing that, despite what you think about me online, I don't pander my career to women. I would argue this special is way more for guys. Rife was also on the Chicks in the Office podcast. He says he attracts audiences of 90% women who aren't fans for the right reasons, who quickly realize his shtick isn't for them. So they bring their boyfriends or husbands who are always reluctant because they probably bought the tickets. They didn't want to be there. And then like 20 minutes into the show, they realize my comedy is so much more for guys than it is for girls. A fellow comedian on TikTok in a video said, imagine throwing away millions of dollars and fans who like you to cater to unfunny white dudes. Colette Fountain wrote for the Daily Beast under the headline, Matt Rife wants men to like him, so he punches down at women. Colette wrote about a recent interview with Matt Rife, where he weighs in on the age-old question of where to draw the line in comedy, how dark is too dark, and what can modern audiences withstand. Matt's take was, you can say whatever you want, now you have to prepare for the repercussions, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to, how do you sleep at night? Colette writes, and for Rife, the repercussions have been swift and harsh. Notorious nice guy Hank Green. I'm not familiar with who Hank Green is, and then I looked him up, and I still can't tell you who Hank Green is, but he's a notorious nice guy. Seems cool. This Hank Green person wrote, a comedian ruining his relationship with a large portion of his fan base because he wanted to be like all the other boring-ass Netflix special, you can't tell jokes anymore crowd is actually just depressing. But Colette writes, it doesn't have to be this way. In James Acaster's Cold Lasagna Hate Myself 1999, Acaster opens by saying, edgy comedians. No one tells them what they can and can't say. They walk straight on stage, do 10 minutes sometimes just slagging off transgender people. If people on the internet get upset about it, the comedian's always like, bad luck, that's my job, I'm a stand-up comedian. Attempting to join the likes of Dave Chappelle, Ricky Gervais, and Jimmy Carr, Matt Rife seems to care more about his status among other men than he does about his own career. For him to be taken seriously as a comic is to punch down. Passable crowd work does not make you a great comedian. On Chortle, Sam Serrano writes under the headline, Matt Rife and the trouble with being a TikTok comedian. Serrano writes, it's not hyperbolic to say Matt Rife is the most successful comedian working today with 6.4 million Instagram followers, 18.2 million TikTok followers, and a world tour that sold 600,000 tickets in 48 hours. He's undeniably successful. But his latest special isn't doing him many favors. Serrano says, as a comedian, I've recently started putting out stand-up clips online to try to build a following, and there's certainly pressure among all comedians to do the same. We've seen circuit veterans such as Jeff Innocent be able to tour for the first time, relatively new acts build fan bases they can perform to, and sell out arenas. It's been great to see. Comedians now have the ability to create their own audiences, even when TV and the industry isn't backing them. However, social media does create a culture of, if you're not constantly on people's phones, you'll be forgotten, and I think this could become a problem when creating content. How many good pieces of art can somebody make in a year? If a musician puts out 4 full albums in a year or an author puts out 4 full novels, it's going to be hard for them to keep up their quality. As creative people, we're supposed to take time and be perfectionists about what we make, but as content creators for social media, it's recommended to put something out every day so the two can clash. I don't think it's completely out of the question to say that Matt Rife has also felt this pressure to put content out, but on a much larger scale. So when people say the material in the latest special is undercooked or weak, it's because he hasn't given himself the amount of time necessary to make it as good as it can be. I can quite safely say if he had given himself another 6 months to get this special ready, then he would have taken the joke out and replaced it with a better one. From how I see it, the pressure to put content out and continue growing your audience has left Matt with a comedy special getting slated when it could have been decent if given the time to be fully formed. Ricky Gervais has a controversy of his own, although this one pretty harmless. You see, Ricky, in a recent tweet, referred to himself as middle-aged. Ricky is 62. People are debating whether or not 62 is middle-aged. A fan asked Ricky, is it suitable to watch his new special with his nan and grandpa on Christmas Day? Ricky joked, depends. Do they enjoy watching a middle-aged man swearing, joking about the Holocaust, and pretending to do something nasty with a nasty person? You don't need to know what the rest of that joke was, trust me. And that was the controversy. Somebody said, calling yourself middle-aged at 62 is a bit of a stretch. You consider yourself middle-aged? That's funny. But somebody else said, I thought he was 45. 62 is crazy. Another added he could pass for 45. Somebody settled this with a screenshot of the Google definition of middle age, which states it refers to a person aged between 45 and 65. The Guardian spoke to Eliza Schlesinger and said, I'm thinking what many women are thinking, but saying it out loud. They asked her if she could recall a gig so bad that it's now funny. Listen to this. She said, I was probably around 24. A country club outside L.A. requested all-female comics. When we got there, it was a room full of 50 to 60-year-old men having a party where they had also hired strippers who were dancing and sitting on laps while we told jokes. Oh, awful. We were told whoever did the best won $200. At that time, all of my material was about LA traffic and pizza. I didn't win the money. I'm still sore about it. All right, Eliza, where do you find your material? She said, the most relatable, juiciest stuff is what's in all our minds. The craft of comedy comes from realizing that what I'm thinking is probably what many people, many women are thinking, and it just takes saying it out loud. I get a lot of material from being honest about my own feelings, my fears and embarrassment. I'm also constantly fascinated by the science, biology, and sociology behind why men and women act the way they do. Everything we say when we date, or in relationships, or relating to each other is based on a need to feel seen, to survive, to feel heard. And I love talking about it. Best heckle, Eliza Schlesinger. She said, I have a joke about how ubiquitous the term bitch has become. Boss bitch, bad bitch, etc. And I posit that women become bitches because of systematic mistreatment and discomfort, but no woman wants to be a bitch. No woman wakes up and sets her morning attention to bitch mode. So some guy once yelled out, you never woke up next to my sister. And I was like, why are you waking up next to your sister? Any pre-show rituals? Eliza said, I go to the green room and any sugar around I will inhale. I start to get excited for the show and it makes me hungry. So I'll eat a bunch of snacks and then check on merch to make sure it's set up the way I like. We've been doing one-of-a-kind signed Polaroids of me and fans love them. So I do those. Then I try to remember to drink water. I pee 5 or 6 times and I always walk my feature act to side stage for the start of the show. I call it walking them to school. But I like to be there when the show starts to see them take the stage. I think it sets a good energy. Salon recapped Mary Trump's appearance with Kathy Griffin. Mary Trump is the niece and frequent critic of Uncle Donald. This took place in a video conversation available only for paid subscribers to a newsletter. They started mocking Joe Rogan listeners for believing Joe Rogan is the news. Kathy Griffin said, I have to wonder because when I first met him back in the day, he was a freaking road comic. He had a good act. He was the best of the best. I don't think he would even say that, but he wasn't horrible. And then something happened where he decided to get all roided up. And I haven't seen him in many years, but the last time I saw him, I didn't even recognize him. And he became a UFC announcer, which is just. Mary Trump said, the idea that somebody like Joe Rogan, who, has the IQ of a turnip, is so influential, it's kind of terrifying. I was catching up on Trevor Noah's podcast. A couple comments here. First of all, Trevor Noah Podcast Company. Why don't you put more commercials in? I know people sometimes tell me I have a lot of commercials. Why don't you listen to Trevor Noah's podcast and then come back here and tell me I have too many commercials? Okay. I also noticed the show starts with 10 minutes of Trevor's talking to people. It's not clear to me who the people are. He may have set the table and explained who they are. Maybe they didn't, but it's the host's job to get that into your brain. I not only do this podcast, I've worked in the industry for 30 years. I'm a professor. I'll point out to people to this day, Howard Stern will say things like, Gary, you're the producer. And everybody who listens to Howard knows Gary's the producer, but that's for the one person who might not get it, or you'll qualify like former President Barack Obama, as opposed to just saying Obama, that kind of stuff. So I don't really know who Trevor's talking to, but he talks to them for like 10, 12 minutes. Skip. The interviews, I know what Trevor's going for, and he's not looking to do a comedy show, but I'm already finding the show not fun. Might hit unfollow. We'll see. Chelsea Handler was touring New England and told the Western Mass News, I live, eat, and breathe comedy. That's me. I'm an East Coaster, so every time I come to the East Coast, it feels like coming home. East Coast all the way. Food, culture, all of it. She was looking forward to eating fried clams. I like fried clams a lot, so I'll probably get after that. Her new set is based on stories from her childhood. She said, I started my own babysitting company when I was 10, and I lied and said it was 15, so I ended up babysitting for a 14-year-old boy for 2 summers who was about 17 when I got done with him, and I was 12. It was an interview with a comedian, so they had to talk about cancel culture, and she said, there's so much ugliness going on around the world, so it kind of feels more purposeful and more important than ever to be a comedian and be able to bring people together in a sense of togetherness and joyfulness. I'm a powerful woman that's demonstrated throughout my stand-up, and this is the takeaway. I think the most effective way to impact other women is to also feel the same way about themselves. I don't think anybody's ever too young to watch me, but if you're watching me when your parents were telling you not to, you were doing the right thing. It's important for me to get into your brains and psyches early. A federal judge has dismissed most of Saah Silverman's lawsuit against Meta. This about the unauthorized use of authors' copyrighted books to train AI models. U.S. District Judge Vince Chabria offered a full-throated denial of one of the author's core theories that Meta's AI system is itself an infringing derivative work made possible only by information extracted from copyrighted material. In July, Saah had also joined a class action against OpenAI, accusing the company of copyright infringement. We'll keep an eye on that one. That is your comedy news for today. Follow the show wherever you get your podcast. That might include Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Pocket Casts, YouTube, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.